And where down we go, 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 where down we go, 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 so where down we go, 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 way down we go.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Biden's open border policy has caused this disarray at the border. It is Biden's immigration policy. Joe Biden and his administration have broken the border, and we need to put these protocols back in place.
Yes, ma'am, we do. That is, again, Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican of Tennessee. The Los Angeles Times the other day published a report yesterday blaming Republicans for, quote, mischievous partisanship over the border issue, and especially referencing things that VP Harris has not been doing. Congressman Cuellar, Texas Democrat, said the vice president's playing, in my opinion, very safe by simply not dealing with the border. It's got to be dealt with. Our next guest from the Heritage Foundation, James J. Carafano, an expert in national security. James, glad to have you back on board, sir.
So, look, not to call the vice president a liar, but among the other things she said is she's going to address the root causes of the border crisis, and she said the number one thing is climate change. That climate change is driving mass migration. So, because I trust the vice president, because of course she's an honorable woman, I looked up the numbers. So the global statistics on the number of climate deaths in 2019 was 250,000. It's a big number. You want a bigger number? There's 8 billion people in the world.
Well, but Jim, I think you're abusing those numbers somehow or another. I don't know how, but you are.
There's 8 billion people, and you can peg 250,000 deaths worldwide over the entire planet to climate change. More than 250,000 people have crossed the border in the United States.
Yes, up to 180,000 last month.
Yeah, so where the heck is she getting this from?
From thin air.
There is not a migration anywhere in the world today being driven by climate change. That's a fact. It's not negotiable. It's an absolute fact. And then for her to say that climate change is driving people here, even though there is literally less than zero evidence for that, and she's not challenged by the mass media. She's not challenged by people in her own party, and then they attack people for attacking the administration for lying. Listen to the Mayorkas testimony today, because literally he said things which were unbelievable. Okay, maybe he didn't say outright lies, but he said, well, we don't have any minors in custody. Well, dude, that's because you shipped them all to HHS,
yes,
Health and Human Services. That's a shell game. And then they asked him questions like basic questions, like, okay, how many people did you guys send into the country and not even give a court date for an immigration judge? And he goes, I don't know. Dude, you're the head of the department. What am I missing here?
And my other concern is these children that are coming. We see the children on the other side. They come, so we're going to care for them. Not going to leave them out there to die. Many of them have a telephone number in their pocket. Supposedly that's a relative. We don't really vet them. We call the number. Yeah, it's a cousin I know is coming. Send them to. I don't know. We're sending them to a relative or to a den of pedophiles.
Well, look, the other thing is, I don't doubt that HHS is trying to turn them over to a credible person.
But are they vetting? They're not vetting, Jim.
But here's the deal. Well, we keep talking about unaccompanied minors. The vast majority of these kids are 16, 17, many of them 18 years old.
Young men.
So literally, they will be supervised for anything from days to weeks to months to a year or so before they're just out doing whatever they want. So this notion that I think when people say, we're finding sponsors for these things, they think they're like little babies that are being cuddled, swaddled in a cloth, and that we're handing over newborns to parents and cousins and uncles. Literally, we are handing off young adults to whoever who are literally going to walk out the back door and go out and look for a job.
Yeah, or join MS-13 or other gangs. There's a Harvard Harris poll, I'm sure you're aware, that came out the other day that said 65% of registered voters say Biden is encouraging illegal immigration in the U.S. 65% say he's encouraging illegal immigration. 35% say he's discouraging. I don't know where they're thinking, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. So first of all, with a number like that, part of those have to be people in his own party, which is interesting.
2 out of 3.
It's a majority. It represents a majority, which is interesting. And when you have an administration that completely lies about this issue and a press that completely tries to ignore or excuse the issue, and every liberal pundit and whatever disparaging anybody that questions them. So the entire woke machine, everybody outside the cone of silence is telling people nothing to see here, just walk on. And Americans still get it, that this is wrong. Boy, that really tells you something.
This is James J. Carafano from the Heritage Foundation. He had served at one time with the Homeland Security Advisory Council and 25 years in the Army. And I want to switch topics briefly, Jim. I can't have you on with your knowledge and background. Plus, you've got a book coming out, The Changing Face of War, part of a book series on how various trends are affecting the nature of armed conflict. The Hamas rockets being fired into Israel, rockets supplied by Iran to Hamas, and we're told by the left, some on the left in particular, that Israel shouldn't be firing back. They should just sit there and take it.
Well, there's two things going on here. One is Hamas is desperate to destroy the Abraham Accords. Remember, the only reason they have to exist is to destroy Israel. So if every Arab nation is treating Israel like a normal country, then their justification for existing evaporates. So they have to have blood in the streets, Palestinian children lying dead in the street. Doesn't matter who kills them or how they got killed.
Right.
So they can turn to the Arab world and say, oh, my God, you can't do this, right? So it's all about screwing the normalization of relations between the Arabs and the Israelis. And then, of course, Iran, this administration is pleading to get back into the Iran deal. Iran is desperate to humiliate them and embarrass them in every way possible. So what better way than to have America pleading to get back into the deal, even as people are hammering Israel with rockets? So the administration looks weak and feckless in the way they're dealing with the region. Don't forget, they just, there's this group organization called UNRWA, it's the United Nations organization that provides aid to the Palestinians. We were the biggest donor. Trump cut it off. Yeah. Biden immediately restored it. It's like something like $200 million. So Biden literally writes them a check for $200 million, and the first thing they do is attack Israel. Now, if that isn't a spit in your face, Matt, I don't know what is.
He did. He's being quoted by a statement. I've been looking for audio of it, but it may be just a statement that he supports Israel's right to defend itself. And I think even Pelosi said, maybe even Schumer, I lost track, but they're just not vocal at all about Hamas has to stop.
Yeah, I mean, could you think of this is the leader of the free world, and the best he could muster is, I hope it ends soon, and of course Israel can defend itself. Literally, this would be like FDR saying the day after Pearl Harbor, well, of course the people of Hawaii should defend themselves. Right. And, the Japanese shouldn't have bombed my fleet. I mean, really? That's the best, as a leader of the free world, that's the best you can muster in response to our most important ally in our most important ally in the Middle East. 1,600 rockets rain down on them from the sky. And your answer is, I hope it ends soon.
Well, I want to, folks, again, James is very prolific, an accomplished historian and researcher. You have a publication that came out, it's available now, Brutal War. It's a study of the combat in the Southwest Pacific. Since you brought up Pearl Harbor, in Brutal War and the people you saw in leadership positions, and you document in there compared to what we have in this White House now, are leaders of our country. I think would either be speaking German or Japanese at this point.
Well, I'm no fan of the New Deal and a lot of the domestic policies that FDR had. But, the reason why I still admire FDR is when World War II started, it was like, dudes, put the New Deal on the shelf. Because if we don't win this one, we're not going to survive. Right. Matter of fact, there was a U.S. information agency that was stood up during World War II, and essentially to work, propaganda and information support of the war effort. And it was stacked by a bunch of New Dealers, and they said, well, okay, we're going to use World War II as an opportunity to sell the New Deal, because after the war we want everybody to, embrace, socialism basically. And FDR said, no, we're not going to do that, you idiot. We're going to have this agency focus on winning the war. And if we think our policies are good ideas after the war, we'll try to sell it to the American people.
So I'm seeing the same thing happen now, and the administration is kind of going along with it.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens in the world. Well, that's an excuse for me to pass the American Jobs Plan. It doesn't matter what happens. Well, that's my excuse for me to pass the American Family Plan or my budget. So I have a progressive wish list, and it doesn't matter what horrible, terrible thing is going on in the world. The answer is it's all Trump's fault, and the $6 trillion I want to spend is the answer to that problem. I mean, if they have not destroyed every ounce of credibility they had in governing this country, I don't know what it's going to take.
I got to tell you, I have never prayed as hard for this country as I have over recent weeks and months, and I'm praying for the leadership there. Well, for the Biden and Harris team, but I mean to get it right, and we're going in the last 20 seconds, Jim. Where are we going if we continue this road?
Well, look, I think America's a great country, and I think we'll survive. But these are self-inflicted wounds,
yeah.
and I just think that's unforgivable.
James, thanks as always. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. James J. Carafano, Heritage Foundation. Coming up, our Health and Human Service Secretary does not know abortion law.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter @LarryConnorsUSA.